So today we're going to talk about parallel and perpendicular lines. Essentially what you need to know is parallel lines have the same slope, which if you think about it makes sense. If you were to look at two parallel lines, they're moving in the exact same direction. And the symbol for parallel is just two lines right next to each other. Perpendicular lines have negative reciprocal slopes. Which I know that sounds like a mouthful, but really what it means is just change the sign. So change the sign and flip the number. And the symbol for perpendicular is two lines at a right angle, perpendicular angle. So first we're just going to practice determining the slopes of parallel and perpendicular lines. So if you look at number 1, I can tell that the slope is just the number in front of x. So the slope of this line is 2, which means the slope of a line parallel to it would also be 2. The slope of the perpendicular line, well, I'm going to make that 2 into a fraction first. And it's the negative reciprocal. So I'm going to change the sign and then I'm going to flip it, which makes it a negative 1 over 2 slope. So it's really 2 steps. Change the sign and flip that number. For the next one, the slope of this line is negative 5. That's the number in front of x. So the slope of a line parallel to it would also be negative 5, which I already know then the perpendicular line would be positive. And if you flip 5, or 5 over 1, that's going to give you 1 over 5. So if you're just looking at all these slopes, you should see 2 with the same sign and then a third one with a different sign. So for number 3, just go ahead and pull the slope from right in front of x, which is 1/2. So the slope of the line parallel would also be 1/2. And the perpendicular slope, I'm going to flip 1/2 to make it 2 over 1, which is really just 2, and I need to make it the opposite sign, so it would be negative 2. Just continuing the same pattern here, so number 4, my slope is negative 3 over 4. So the slope of a line parallel would also be negative 3 over 4. Go ahead and change the sign so it'll be positive and flip it. So it's going to be 4/3. So those were all pretty simple because they were already in slope-intercept form. But if you look at number 5, I have to get that into slope-intercept form before I can determine the slope. So I'm going to do a little side work here and rewrite it. So x minus y equals 10. Move your x term to the other side by subtracting 1x on both sides. And of course putting that first. And then divide by the number in front of y, which is negative 1. So it's going to give me y equals 1x minus 10. So now I can tell the slope is positive 1. So the slope of a line parallel to it would also be 1. And then if I were to flip 1, well, if I flip 1 over 1, it's still just 1. So really, I'm just changing the sign here. So there we go. Since we know these facts about the slopes of parallel and perpendicular lines, we can just look at two slopes and determine whether they are perpendicular, parallel, or neither. So if you look at number 6, what I want you to kind of do is open up your calculator because I want to change these slopes so that they're in the same format. So I've got my calculator here. I'm going to go ahead and type in 0.4 and then hit math, enter, enter. I want you to do the same thing. And it tells me that this is the same as 2/5. So because these slopes are the same, that tells me it is the slope of two parallel lines. So I know that those are parallel. If you look at the next one, number 7, notice that they're opposite sign, but they're the same number otherwise. So it's not the negative reciprocal, it's just the negative. So this is going to be neither, because it's not the same slope and it's also not the negative reciprocal slope. For number 8, we're going to have to do a little bit of work in order to determine whether they're parallel, perpendicular, or neither. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to move the 2x to the other side to get y equals negative 2x plus 1. So my slope I'm going to be comparing is -2. Now I'm going to solve the next one. So go ahead and move your x to the other side. So subtract 4x. It's going to be -8y equals -4x plus 16. Divide both sides by -8. And then y equals 1/2 x minus 2. So the slope here is 1/2. Well, I notice between these two slopes, they are opposite sides. And 1/2 flipped would give me 2. So I know that these are going to be perpendicular lines because the slopes are negative reciprocals of each other. Next, we're going to take it a step further and write the equation of a line that's either parallel or perpendicular to a line that we're given. So first step is to identify these three types of slope. And then step 2 is to solve for b using the appropriate slope. Alright, so let's look at number 9. First, I'm going to pull the slope that I know from this line. So this is 5. So the slope of a line parallel would be also 5. Okay? Then I need to flip 5 to make it 1/5 and change the sign to get the perpendicular slope. Alright, so now we're going to throw out this line. We used it for what we needed, and we're going to come up with two equations of different lines. This is the point I'm using, so x comma y. So for the parallel line, I'm going to start with y equals mx plus b. And the x and y I'm using is 5, 2, so I'm going to replace y with 2. But for m, I'm going to use the parallel m. So 5, and then replace x with 5 also, plus b. And solve for b. So we spent some time on this last class as well. So subtract 10 on both sides, and we'll get b equals -8. So now we have the m and the b for the parallel line, so let's go ahead and put it together. So y equals 5x minus 8. That's going to be the parallel line. So notice if you look back at our original line right here, same slope but different y-intercepts because they are different lines starting in different places. Alright, next we're going to do the same thing but for our perpendicular line. So this time when I plug into y equals mx plus b, I'm going to use the perpendicular slope. So replace y with 2 and replace m this time with -1/5. X is still 5. And go ahead and solve. So I'm going to do -1 times 5, which, I'm sorry, -1/5 times 5, which is -1. Add 1 on both sides. And you'll get b equals 3. So now take your b and your slope, put that together. So y equals -1/5 x plus 3. Let's try another one just like it. So taking a look at my line, I can determine my slope right off the bat. So the slope here would be -3/4. So the slope of a line parallel would be the same. The slope of a line perpendicular, I'm going to flip, so 4/3 and make it positive. Now I'm using this x and this y to find the two equations. For the parallel line, well really for both of them, we all start with y equals mx plus b. So replace y with -1, replace m with the parallel slope, which is -3/4, and the x, 12. And solve for b. So -3/4 times 12 is going to be -9. And then add 9 on both sides. So you'll get b equals 8. So use those two pieces of information, the m and the b, to write the equation. Y equals -3/4 x plus 8. For the perpendicular line, I'm following a similar process. I'm just going to use the perpendicular slope instead. So I'm still going to use this x and this y, but now I'm going to use this slope. So replace y with -1 again. But this time replace m with 4/3, x with 12, and solve for b. So that's going to be -1 equals 16 plus b. Subtract 16 on both sides, and you'll get go. Put together your perpendicular slope, 4/3, and your y-intercept that you found, -17. So those are your two equations. Go ahead and flip over. Some special cases you might see would be our Hoy-box lines. So this is a Hoy line because it's missing x. So remember that means it's horizontal, 0 slope, and y equals. So, okay, I can get my slope right from that. And that means my parallel line would also be a 0 slope. But what happens when I flip the number 0? So think about it, it's 0 over 1. When I flip that, I get 1 over 0, which is no good. That means undefined. So the perpendicular line would be undefined. That would be the opposite reciprocal slope. So for my parallel line, I'm just going to follow the same process. So y equals, just like the original line. But I have a different point. What does y equal? Well, y equals 5.
Basic Corral, please dial 85.
Now for the perpendicular line, it's an undefined slope. That means that's bucks. So it's going to be x equals, and look at your point. Well, x equals -4. So it's just kind of something that you have to use that Hoy-box to get. So similar but opposite situation for 12. This is a box line. So that means that it's a vertical line with undefined slope. And it's an x equals equation. So this is undefined slope, which means the perpendicular line is also undefined. And what's the opposite of undefined? Well, that's 0. So the parallel line is also going to be a box, x equals. And look at your point, what does x equal? -6. For the perpendicular line, it's a Hoy line, right? Because it's got 0 slope, so it's going to be y equals. And look at your point, what does y equal? Well, it equals -3. So there you have it. Those are your two special cases. You've got a couple problems to try. Make sure to use your notes and go back in the video should you need to. If you get stuck on anything, and raise your hand when you're done those video problems, and we'll come around and check it. Thanks for watching.